Hello, hello, and welcome to hello, 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 and welcome to hello, 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 and welcome to. Uh, I've been doing a thing called Pop Cartoon Kabala for a while. I'm going to since the beginning of counting. The 3 is very simple. The 7 is, nuanced but elemental. Some little polarities, very important ones. The planets and the characters, and that's how I shifted into the Pop Cartoon Kabala project, was the sense that there's characters and tendencies associated with core priorities that benefit being understood, just to have a sense of why everything is the way it is. Just a little, just to have a sense of, but that doesn't take away from, in service of that, we've been learning, wrong side, the Bnei Yissaschar, Tzvi Melech of Dinav, the primest, most deepest and fundamentalist of Hasidic astro-Kabbalists. He gets into the 12. He wrote his book around the 12 months of the year and the signs around them. And that was very generous because they hadn't really done it within the Hasidic movement so much. There's a long history of astro-Kabbalah, full of profound moral and functional secrets about the nature of just the cycle, months and times and shifts. Because I think there's one of the distinctions between Jewish astrology and Kabbalah and the Hellenistic sort of Platonic tradition is the question of what are the long-term shifts, which I think you have in like Ptolemaic, Hellenic calendar stuff, but less. I feel like it's more practical, but I could be wrong. Projection. This new moon just started is a big deal regionally. Elul. People say a lot about Elul. I will confess, Elul is end of summertime, and there's a lot of intentionality popularly, more than other months in many ways, because it is such a conceptual impact. Like the beginning of the month for most Oriental communities, they already start singing songs of apology and forgiveness with all their hearts. And so that is definitely the priority, popularly, traditionally. Just start saying you're sorry with all your heart for everything you can't do, for everything that just hasn't been possible. And there's so much, everyone I haven't been in touch with, every bit of love that I've been responsible for that I couldn't do. Let's call it Virgo. Is, I think, part of the mystery of where perfectionism grows out of like just friendly, associative, expressive confidence. There's a point where that turns into imposition, and that is characterized through judgment. That's what I heard. That's what I heard going in. Going in, I heard stuff that like there's a tradition to avoid judgment during Elul, lest we be judged, which is adorably, fascinatingly impossible, and really winds up meaning just try to notice. Maybe don't let it slip into curse, but instead just noticing and seeing how much we can take responsibility for, because that's what most repentance is about, is coming back in. How to resist that I should have, that I could have, I would have if I had known. And depending on how much of our lives we have felt entirely whole with, is the subtlety of what that starts to be when we do notice everything just at the edge of what we could have and should have, / could and should, could. But what I've wondered really has to do with what's a waste of time in relationship to that idle speculation. No, genuinely trying to notice, especially in the context of how our responsibilities to each other are. There's a responsive voice that reminds me, aha, no, I am not responsible for more than I'm responsible for. Other people did that and do that, and I just need to get out of the way. And that's also a level of discernment, I wanted to say wisdom, I want to say judgment. Like discernment's the guy in the middle. Noticing. Noticing is so intimate. Elul is very often and popularly, almost universally associated with the acronym Ani lidodi vidodi li. I am to my beloved is to me. I just want to see what he says about it, because there is something intimate there in between judgment and access that I'm just curious to see what he'll say about it. Mahut HaChodesh, meaning of the month, page Kuf Samach Zayin. Utsdaka tiye lanu ki. The mix and order of the four-letter name of God for the month of Elul is Hey, Hey, Wow, Yud, which comes out from the Psukim from Deuteronomy 6:25. Utsdaka tiye lanu ki. And charity will be to us because blah, 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 blah. Key. It stops there. It's one of the places that the four-letter name of God is hidden in the Bible. And here's a classic one. The last letters of those four words is Daka, and it is traditionally. Enelo tevos chutza tiocha shemainu itzedek tehi lan. And, you know, these letters, if you just leave the letters, the name out, they are the tzedek, which is Jupiter. Tehi will be lan to them in the lower list where just the chaf, just the one chaf. You just took out, you hit okay. Which, and those letters together, in Gematria, is Betshuva, in return, in repentance. It's the same thing, coming back. Remesh HaChodesh Hazeh, it's a roof hanal, sholet bo hu mesugal itasek b'tshuva, because everyone knows. It's a good time. It's a good time to come back down into. I've seen people translate tshuva as integrity itself, where you just come back to your core wholeness, which is your true condition. The true condition of your soul is wholeness. And everyone should and would just feel very whole about that, as much as every cat and bird, except for the sense of distance that we are from where we're at. And this is where the challenge, but the sun is still revolving. You know, there's a range of things that you can notice and are called to notice. Good, tshuva, repentance, integrity. I would say shleimut is integrity. That's really wholeness. Tshuva has to do with the fundamental Sabbath thing, which is to come back, just to stop running and be able to be with in a whole way. Plus 3, obvious 3, 10 is 446. Yes, exactly. Rameshadinim shel Tammuz av nimtakim be'elu, which is to say, which is to hint to, which is to allude, which is to imply that whatever came up as judgments over the summer in between Tammuz and Av, you know, Cancer and Leo, over the last 2 months before, whatever came up is sweetened in Elul. It's processed and accepted and made part of the good. So, good news, everyone, presumably. Whatever came up in the summer, thing go for a second. And the reassembling of them in the aspect of Elul, well, let's see what he says. Nimtakim be'elul, it's a hint through tshuva, everything that came up starts to get put down. And by put down, I mean sweetened, refreshed. Let's say you have a problem and you feel like you understand the problem. You're already dealing with a much nicer problem. Maybe understand is the wrong word. Kadvu Arishonim, as the first one said, Shabbat Shuvah Nizhar Me'od Shelo Leshanot Diburo Good. Or at least willing at just coming back. Someone has pulled it off. Someone has pulled off some degree of I used to, now I don't. I used to be racist, but now I'm so good. There is a thing like that, right? Someone's genuinely understands something and they're genuinely not the same kind of asshole. In a million ways, according to what they notice. And a lot of what they notice has to do with what comes up in the conflicts, specifically in Cancer and Leo. Suddenly being able to be put down and put together. Someone who's sorry and come back has to be really careful not to change his words, not to change his tone, not to change his truth, and to be yedoveremet, and to be actually able to speak honestly. Because part of the problem in renouncing any of the bad we ever were is how disingenuous. And so the middle of these letters is this is justice. Hen tzedek, this is truth. Hen tzedek, this is justice. Al derech she'amro lazal, like the rabbi said, she'ehen shelcha tzedek, that your hen, which I think here means treasure, should be righteous, should be jovial, should be right, should be friendly. But then it says further that the beginning of the letters acronym of these lines is, you guys, this is a moment that when I saw this, I couldn't even quite see it, because it relates to the beginning of this effort that I tried doing years and years ago in developing Pop Cartoon Kabala. Pop Cartoon Kabala grew out of an ambition I'd had to develop an educational curriculum for small children based on the earliest texts, in the order of the earliest texts, here being the Sefer Yetzirah. And in the Sefer Yetzirah is a fundamental polarity, 3, 7, and 12. And they associate, in most of the Kabbalistic tradition, these 3, 7, 12 with the forefathers, the first three, very famous, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Holy Trinity. That Abraham is, let's say, love, and Isaac is yira, fear. I translate it as sensitivity sometimes. I think that's fair. Awe, sensitivity, noticing, as opposed to outpouring, not noticing, which is very Abrahamic. Sometimes it's embarrassing. At which point you have the Isaacical to sort of hold it together and keep it dignified. Hen sedek, be'emtza. Here's or wealth of justice, of joviality, violence, which I would have thought more was netzach. There's definitely a very popular Kabbalistic, the Q tradition, like the one Alan Moore uses, presumably in Crowley and John Dee's name, to have Gevura be Mars. I haven't loved that because Mars is so active and Gevura is so passive. Right? Things move, things come. And to have Mars be a third, resolution between extremes is maybe. Or it's just different buzzings of different things in a different sort of order. I don't know. But here, in this model, they seem willing to identify the third with Tzedek, with Jupiter. And there is something to that on the level of the jovial does reconcile between. And in many ways, let's say if you'd have Saturn be Chesed and Mars from the 10th Sefirot, not from the 3, 7, 12, because the Sefer Yetzirah divides up the 32 paths into one system of the 10 Sefirot, which does include the Yud He Vav He for the month, because that is part of how 3 and 7 become 12. Is 12 is just 4 sets of 3, and the 4-letter names of God are only 3 letters turned into a factorial that becomes 12 different possibilities. How many different ways can you have the 4-letter name of God? 12, because 2 of those letters are the same letter. And this is a fundamental secret. Yes, dear, come in. Hey, what's up there? What are you looking for? recording a podcast learning about Elul. Have you ever wanted to know anything about Elul? Okay, what are you looking for? A little bit of gold. You found it. Yay! A lot of the harmony found in the shifting of the role of who gets to be Tiferet in Zeir Anpin, I think, is part of why it's sometimes easy and important not to make too much of polarization, but to accept the concept of fully tripartite divine masculine, divine feminines as wholes. There is a certain kind of temple experience that annihilates everything except into the sun and the moon. And the time and a place, whatever, it's nice to get perspective sometimes. But anyhow, astrology, I think, really comes from taking the two sort of extremes, power in one direction and affection in the other direction, and with that sort of range of polarities and shifts between them. Not to get too conceptual, I'm convinced that Virgo is really an expression of Leo. Ariella, the line from Psalms 113:9. Aim habanim smecha, hallelujah. That's how it ends over there.